Hey guys, we're on day 25 here. I have the link to the written notes that'll pop up for you guys. They're going to look something very similar to this. All right, you're going to fill this out in order as we go. Okay, so our chapter here today is focused around basically like business creation and how businesses deal with competition and based on that competition, some advantages they have or might not have depending on how many competitors they have with like products. So we're going to get started here real quick. Like I said, we're going to respect your time as usual. Your first daily blog here is we've got two companies. Okay, we've got Company A, which is selling $5 million worth of product each year, but it has operating costs of $4.95 million. And you've got Company B that sells $150,000 worth of product each year, and their operating costs are $40,000. And you're trying to figure out which one's better off. So think about that quick. Hopefully, you are identifying that Company B is better off in terms of profit, right? They've made $110,000 profit, while Company A has only made a $50,000 profit. Okay, which again, if profit is the only determining factor of success, which for a lot of businesses it might be the case. You'll want to know that it's not necessarily how much stuff I sell; it's can I sell that stuff and not have extraordinary costs as we do it. Okay, so we're going to talk about that today, and hopefully some things start making sense. So the first thing that we've got to know is, and again, you're on your notes here. You're on your notes. You're right at the top. Okay, so number one goal. Okay, so the first thing we've got to understand here is a goal. The business's goal has to be to make at least some profit. Okay, they can't continue to lose money and stay in operation. And businesses obviously have different goals. There's more to running a business than making money. But at the end of the day, if a business loses money, they're going to eventually close. Okay, so we've got to be able to make some type of a profit. Okay, and businesses are going to operate where their profit is maximized, meaning that for example, if I worked at Flavor Freeze, I could stay open 24 hours and probably sell some ice cream in the middle of the night, not tons. But that's going to cost me labor costs, right? I have to pay the workers to be there, and I have to light the building and those types of things. So it probably doesn't maximize my profit to be open at late at night or super early in the morning, for that matter, when we're talking about getting ice cream. Okay, so we're going to operate where profit is maximized as close as possible. Now, another word that we get kind of mixed up here is this term revenue. Okay, and revenue is going to be different than profit. Okay, revenue is simply the money that I collect for everything that I sell. Okay, so if let's say I sell cheeseburgers, and let's say I sell cheeseburgers for $5 each. If I sell 10, my revenue is $50. Okay, now if my cost of making each cheeseburger is $2, well, my profit, so my revenue I said was 50, my cost equals 20. Okay, so revenue minus cost equals profit. My profit in this case would be $30. So profit is different than revenue. And sometimes big companies, they like to brag about how much revenue they have, but profit's going to be what's most important. So the formula for being successful in a business, making a profit in a business, is pretty straightforward. Revenue minus cost equals profit. It's a very, very, very simple formula, right? There's only two variables to it. You've got how much money you make, and you've got how much money you spend to make it. Now, within those variables, there's quite a bit of stuff. We've got kind of familiar with them with the supply and demand stuff, but your costs are going to include any number of things. So you've got your laborers, you've got your materials, right? Your shipping costs, maybe upgrades. You've got to pay some taxes. And if you pay to advertise and stuff like that, those are things that are costs, all right? You might be able to add a couple more specific things in there, but for the most part, that list is pretty good, okay? Now, how do we maximize our profit? Well, there's only two ways to do it. We can either make revenue bigger, all right? So we can increase revenue, right? We can make that 50 up here a 60, for example, or and there's only two ways to increase our revenue. We can sell more stuff. So in this case, sell more cheeseburgers, right? or we can charge a higher price, assuming that we're going to sell the same amount of cheeseburgers, which, as we know, the law of demand tells us if we raise the price too much, we're going to stop selling as much, right? People are going to demand less. Okay. So those are the only two ways that we can increase revenue, right? It's a pretty simple formula in terms of how to do that. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to increase your revenue. Obviously, we can advertise, right? We can do some of that stuff. That's going to eventually make us sell more. Or we can decrease our costs, okay? So if we can buy cheaper beef, if we can hire cheaper workers, whatever the case might be, to decrease our costs to make these cheeseburgers, we can decrease those costs, right? So I have those listed there. Again, hiring fewer workers, paying workers less, those are a little bit tricky. We don't want to buy cheaper materials too often because obviously that lowers the quality and then maybe people won't want to buy as much. Okay. And so, anyway, the ways companies make profits are pretty straightforward. Now, obviously, to get creative in doing these things, that's where good businessmen um, become great businessmen, right? So, keeping that in mind, we're going to look at some things. We're going to analyze how much competition there are in markets. Before we get to that, pause the video here, come up with an answer as to what you would do if you had a choice to open one of these businesses. Okay? Hopefully, you came up with an answer. The common answers I hear are for people like to choose part B. Okay, they're like, oh, I'm gonna be a babysitter in a neighborhood because I can control my prices. I'm gonna force out competition. People have to come to me, right? So B is not a bad option. However, one of the more or less chosen ones is option A, right? And they don't like option A because the exact opposite. We like, oh, competition's bad. We don't want that. Well, what do we know for option A? If there's a lot of successful video game stores, what do we know? Well, we know that there's a demand for it, right? Just like there's a lot of restaurants in Elkhart, there's a demand to go out to eat. So maybe if we can do something special in this video game store market, right, we might be able to be successful in that particular regard. Okay, so all of these have their positives and all of them have their challenges. Again, if you want to go for letter D, all right, that is going to be something that might be, well, I can make the most money out of a clothing line because I can sell it to the most people, right? Because I can ship these clothes all over the planet, all right? However, the likelihood of me being successful in that industry is more challenging, right? It's going to be harder to do because it's an extremely challenging industry to try to get that many people to wear your clothes. Whereas I can be the best babysitter in the world, but if I am limited as to how many kids I can babysit at a time, right? So your profit ceiling is probably a little bit lower than something like a clothing line, but the risk is also higher with the clothing line. It takes tons of money to start it up. For the option of B, it takes very little money to start it up. Okay, and then A and D are kind of in the middle of those things as well. Okay, so no wrong answer. Just kind of depends on how you viewed it. But if you're thinking about how much competition there was, you're on the right track to where we are headed for today. All right. So on your notes, you'll see that you've got a few different charts. And on those charts, okay, you'll see that you're going to fill them out basically in order. All righty. So we're going to look at four different characteristics of businesses that are going to help us determine how much competition there is. Okay. So the first ones, let's define what we're looking at first. So the first thing we're looking at is how many producers are there? That can be anywhere from one producer to 1,000 producers. Okay. So we're going to look at how many producers there are. Then we're going to see if we can tell the similarity of the products. This would include quality. This would include just general taste, right? So like we talked about the clothing industry just a second ago. Like different colors is like personal taste, right? Obviously quality in terms of like if you go to Steak and Shake, those burgers are different than Five Guys, that are different than McDonald's, right? So the quality, the similarity is going to be different, right? And again, can also be by taste. Okay, and then we're going to talk about also how hard is it for new companies to compete. Okay, can I start a business easily in a market? Okay, so like babysitting, super easy. Just let somebody know my name. Clothing industry, super difficult because I have to have so much capital before I'm able to get my clothing name out there, right? And the last thing is my quality good enough, or do I have enough customer loyalty that I can raise my price and still sell the same amount? Okay. And you'll notice some of these answers are kind of like, well, maybe, kind of, a little bit. And so it's kind of difficult to say sometimes, and you're always looking for the exact right answer, right? So it might be a little bit challenging at first to say, well, kind of, and it's okay to say kind of. Okay, that's an okay answer. Like I can kind of raise the prices just a tad. If I'm McDonald's, I raise my price on my cheeseburgers by 10 cents. People probably won't notice. If I raise the price of cheeseburgers to $4.50, people are going to notice and they're going to go somewhere else. So they can maybe raise it a little bit, right? It's okay to say that in terms of when we're analyzing these things. All right. So we're going to talk about one level of competition today. It's referred to as perfect competition. All right. Go ahead, take a second, get these copied down, and we'll talk about them here in a moment. Okay. So if you took a second to write these things down, all right, we're talking about an industry where the products that we're buying are identical. And it's going to make a little bit more sense here in a second when we look at our example on Amazon. All right. So, first of all, the characteristics we'll just go through them. Many producers, meaning that a lot of people can produce these things or sell these things. Okay. The products are going to be identical. There's a keyword there. There's a reason that there's a star in that box. All right. It's easy for someone to compete in these markets because the products are identical. I'm going to buy whatever's cheapest. If a product is identical, I'm going to buy what's cheapest. Since I'm going to buy what's cheapest, I don't have any control over prices, meaning that I'm going to sell my product at whatever people are willing to pay. Okay, so there's no control over prices, and that's because things are identical, right? And we're going to show you the example here in a second. Some examples, all right, agricultural products are close. We're going to show you the example of Amazon.com and gold mining. Like if I mine gold out of the ground, gold is gold. I'm able to sell it for whatever the market price is. The gold that I mine is the same as what someone else mines. That would be an example of perfect competition also. It's actually pretty rare in today's world because our economy is so large. Now, one good example, but not a perfect example, is Amazon.com. So if you go shopping on Amazon, and most of us have these days, right, at some point or another shopped on Amazon. The reason we like it is if we know what we're going to buy and we're a Prime member, we can save some money, and if we can wait 2 days, we'll get it. Now, let's just say I was shopping for a PS4, okay? So even these businesses understand that on Amazon, I don't buy stuff necessarily from Amazon. Okay, I buy stuff from people that are selling stuff on Amazon also. And so notice that even when we talk about these identical products, right? I'm buying a PS4, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all equal. So first of all, we know that sometimes we can buy stuff that's used, right? Sometimes we can buy stuff that's, well, in this case, like new or whatever. Very good, right? And we're shopping by these prices. Those of you that have shopped around on here before, you know that the shipping cost can be just as important as free shipping if you don't add the shipping cost and the price together. So obviously, $3.49 up here. This is brand new, right? That's what they're trying to sell to you. Probably sponsored by Amazon. You guys that know how it works, you get what I'm saying. But these people down here, right? These people down here are obviously, trying to compete, and even though they're selling the same exact thing, they're giving names of what their product is like new, very good, right? But they also compete down here with the positivity ratings. And in terms of when I'm buying something on Amazon, I don't like to pick somebody that has less than a 90% positivity rate. I don't want to deal with having to ship it back, right? And so even when we're shopping online for something that we think is identical with these PS4s, there's still some, you know, differences in the product we're buying. Maybe it's just a customer service thing. And so what I'm saying is that these situations exist. There's things close to perfect competition, but they're not necessarily very common. Okay, even when we go to the store and buy like an apple, right? If you've ever gone to the store, it's a good time to go to the store to buy apples right now. You've got Fiji apples, you've got Honeycrisp apples, you've got pink lady apples, right? There's all sorts of different type of apples that are different from each other. So even when we talk about buying agricultural products, it's not always a perfect example. What it means for businesses to make more money, they've got to be more efficient with their production. Okay, they can't raise prices. They cannot increase revenue unless they produce more stuff. Okay, there's a reason why tons of technology is going into trying to produce more corn per acre. Okay, they cannot raise the price. So they have to lower their costs. If we go back to our formula for figuring out profit, right? So we always get a fair price. It's great for us. We get to pay the cheapest price that we are willing to pay, right? Um, there's two bullet points right at the end. I'm just kind of making you write it. It's in a couple different ways. The producer's got to be efficient, and consumers do not pay more for a product than it's worth. All right. Coming up here, we don't have an assignment necessarily for today. Hopefully, you're keeping up with some things. Okay. First of all, I have several of you that have not turned in daily blogs. Okay. And when I say several, I would probably guess like 25 out of 69 of you have not turned those in. So make sure you're staying on top of that. I also have not received posters from a lot of people. Those are going to be entered at some point on day 25. Okay. So, which in this case is going to be Wednesday the 16th. So make sure that you are staying on top of those things, taking care of business. We're going to start a new project on day 26, okay, that has us looking at businesses and how competitive they are and how they work to be as marketable as possible. Okay, so kind of have in your mind a business that you're familiar with or a business that you would create to be able to analyze and almost create a presentation type feel to it that you'll present to me. You'll type it out on some Google Slides and stuff. So have that in the back of your mind. Since there's no assignment today, use it to make up some missing assignments. Okay, that applies to a whole lot of people. Get that stuff to me. The sooner, the better. All right, the less you'll panic. All right, I appreciate you watching today. We'll talk more about monopolistic competition and a thing called oligopolies on day 26.